My name is Jaspal Bhatia, and I'm a program officer with the AIR Equity Initiative. Following up on what Rayshawn shared this morning, the AIR Equity Initiative is housed at the American Institutes for Research. It's a $100 million philanthropic effort to generate and use high-quality evidence to mitigate the harmful effects by race and place, of segregation by race and place. There we go. Today, we're really excited to partner with Benchmark to present this session, which is asking the tough questions: what interventions work? So in this session, we'll be highlighting some of our grantees, which I'll show to you in a minute, and the interventions and the work that they're doing to change policing and the culture of policing and the practice of policing. So today you'll hear from Chief Nick Sensley, who is the founder and CEO of the Institute for American Policing Reform, from Dr. Hans Manos, who is the Vice President for the Triage Response at the Center for Policing Equity. Then you'll hear from Tahir Duckett, who is the Executive Director of the Center for Innovations and Community Safety at Georgetown University Law Center. And finally, you'll hear from Connor Powelson, who is a contractor for the AIR Equity Initiative, particularly working on the project we have with Benchmark Analytics. And he's also a graduate student at the University of Maryland, College Park, where he is a research assistant at the Lab for Applied Social Science Research. There we go. It's a mouthful. This session will be a little bit different than the ones we've had earlier today. They're going to do a lightning talk where they'll present on their work, so you'll hear from all of them. Then Connor will be doing a very cool demo using the VR system that they have in place at Laser. And then we'll do breakouts, so you can go to 2 different panelists to learn more about their work, hear how you might be able to incorporate it into your own practices. And so we'll direct you through that. With that, I will hand it over to Chief Sensley to come talk.
Good afternoon, everyone. I know you've been waiting just to get up at this guy who's been asking all the questions and irritating everybody, getting on your nerves. But hey, everybody who knows me knows that I am not going to show up for something like this if I can't stir things up, right? Because it's all about us leaving here better equipped than when we walked in. Because if it's just a talking session and a time to pass on news and statistics and things like that, you don't take it away and do something with it, I'm not quite sure what the value of our time. And so I just want to say thank you to all of you who've come up before and what you've had to say, but what you're doing and all of the energy and efforts that you're putting into the work that's out there. Thank you very much, because it makes a difference for where we're going. So I am the founder, CEO of the Institute for American Policing Reform. And I will tell you very quickly that this wasn't a dream of mine to do this and to be engaged in police reform in America, because I believe it's one of the heaviest lifts that could be taken on in this country. Because honestly, I'm still not yet convinced that America really wants to do policing reform. I really am not. But I'm committed to it because I know the necessity of it. I've worked on police ethics and training and development in 42 countries around the world and across the United States. So I've been at this for a while. I've been at this for about 3 decades because I've had a parallel career both in policing and in development around the world. So I'm not a rookie to this concept of change and of ethics and anti-corruption. I've written the anti-corruption policy for a couple of nations around the world. So I got a little bit of a hand in this space. So I was actually asked to do this. In many ways, it's somewhat of a calling. So when I looked at the background of my experience and said, okay, well, what is it that we could possibly do in this space in which there has been a call for reform in America for over 100 years? How many of you are aware that the formal call for police reform in America is more than 100 years old? It's not a new thing, right? But in our opinion, it's never been done. Yes, police have moved in and changed and improved upon things, et cetera, but we've become more militarized. Police are being attacked and ambushed more often than ever before. Many communities are being over-policed, and black and brown people being killed by police disproportionately. We've got issues, some very serious issues in American policing. So when my team spent about 2.5 years just in research and development, deciding what we were going to do before we decided that we would come out. And so my team included initially two of the world's largest law firm, Hogan Lovells, 10th largest law firm in the world, and Weil Gotshalt Managers, which is the 20th largest law firm in the world, a number of subject matter experts from university around, and then of course a great partner came in when the AIR Equity Initiative stepped in as really just a tremendous partner. And I just say that with sincere gratitude for the partnership that we have with Candace working really side by side as a team and partner with us in the work that we're doing. What we've put forth and we've put out there, that there are 5 key areas that we feel, 5 pillar areas, that if we can examine the change, the transformational needs in these 5 key areas, we feel we've got it covered. And those are community engagement, the principles of community engagement. How much should community be involved in the decision-making of public safety? I mean, when you look at what's going on with San Francisco, that's a real challenge. But that's why I asked the question is, okay, that's challenging, but how much do they own it after they make the decision, right? So that's a big issue. Community engagement, principles of law and policy. What are some of the general laws and policies that should apply to policing everywhere? Standards, education, and training. Oftentimes when police officers get in trouble, what do we want to do? We want to look at what happens with their standards. We're looking at, we need to retrain that bad behavior out of it, right? But one of the things we often forget about is education. I always say that training leads to rote mechanical behavior. Education leads to thinking. And we need to combine and emphasize both of those in American policing. I can remember when I was teaching at Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department Regional Training Center, the STAR Center for LA County. We trained 46 police departments in LA County. We used to say, when the stuff hits the fan, I don't want you thinking, I want you to do what needs to be done. Think about how dangerous that is, actually, as a philosophy of policing. Principles of leadership balance. We believe that servant leadership is everything. The concept that I'm here to do what I do because you are more important than who we are. And the service that we provide to you is paramount to us being community. And accountability. You know, we've talked about accountability, the issues of the wandering officer, you know, being able to go from one place to another. So issues around qualified immunity, issues around the ability to skip from one state to the other. Fundamentally, our thesis is this, that public safety is the cornerstone of a community effort, that the police alone do not own public safety. The police are agents of public safety. Now, they take on the heavy lift. They take on the dangerous stuff. They're the ones that run toward the danger, right? But fundamentally, there are things that police are doing, are engaging in, are expected of that should not be owned by the police. So then we're now entering into the field to get proof of concept. And that's where we have the partnerships with AIR, Equity Initiative, and with our law partners continuing with the universities and with subject matter experts. And what we intend to do is that we are going into, with our 5 pillars of reform that you've seen, based upon our 5 pillars of reform, we're going into we just launched off into a 6-year process where we're seeking the most promising practices of police reform from a community perspective that we can discover. In other words, we're not doing police reform at the Institute for American Policing Reform. We're in a process of trying to discover what would appear to be the most promising practices that will lead to national police reform. We're going to go in, we're doing 12 communities in 12 different states where we're doing deep dives. We're working with AIR as a part of our analysis and evaluation, and we're going in, we're working from that 5-pillar perspective. We're working with we're forming community councils, standing community councils that we hope will remain after we leave, where these councils will continuously look across these 5 pillar areas, constantly evaluating and reevaluating and reassessing the most promising practices for their communities in public safety. We learn from those practices. We feed those up into a national council that's run by AIR, and Candace's team facilitates the process of the national council, where ultimately, after doing 12 3-year communities of engagement, deep, and going into over 100, what we call 120 communities of evidence, where we work with the police department to look at the culture and the activities that are part of some of the basic underlying assumptions of how policing is done, why it's done, what's the impact upon the community, what the communities think about it. All of this becomes the evidences that at the end of this 6-year period, we will present to the 50 states of the United States what we believe are the most promising practices for the standardization of policing across America. Now, you know, policing is a states' right issue, right? So you always say, I can't go to 17,000 plus police departments, and as Hans reminded me, and you just don't want to, brother, but I can go to 50 states. I can go to 50 governors. I can go to 50 state attorneys generals. I can go to 50 legislatures and say, there's no reason in the world why policing in Illinois has to be any different from policing in Mississippi or California or Texas or Maryland or anywhere else on the fundamental levels of standards education and training, accountability, laws and policies, principles of communication, community engagement, and principles of leadership. So just in a nutshell, we believe, first and foremost, that police are essential, but so is reform. We do need to reimagine how police communities and how the public owns public safety, because as I pointed out earlier today, these are the most powerful public officials that the everyday citizen engages every day. And if we aren't willing to give them the due regard, support, and accountability, then, in my opinion, as a nation, as a people, we're being negligent. So I look forward to engaging with you on this further as we look at and understand and talk about the reasons why police are essential, but so is reform.
Always tough to follow, Nick. Thank you, Nick, for your words. So I'll do my best to follow up on that. But I'm Hans Manos. I'm the Vice President of the Triage Response Team at the Center for Police and Equity. A bit about me and about TRT. I'm a social worker by training and education, so not a former police officer or former chief. Worked primarily in juvenile justice for many years. Started to think about the front door of that juvenile justice. Started to think about my young men who were at that point from Brownsville, Brooklyn, and East New York, Brooklyn, and their experience with policing. This is kind of height of stop and frisk within New York City, and when we first were entering a conversation, or I should say, as Nick pointed out, re-entering a conversation on what it meant to experience policing as a young black boy in New York City. After that, worked in victim services. Again, dealing primarily with the person in New York City and within the nation that's the most likely to be victimized and least likely to seek services. Of course, again, those are young black boys. And then I worked in police oversight in the city of Philadelphia, where I was the executive director of the Philadelphia Police Advisory Commission, which is the civilian oversight agency for the city of Philadelphia Police. I've been at CPE for the past 3 years, and I'm really excited about the work that we're accomplishing, and I'll go over a little bit of that today. So CPE, we have kind of two complementary lanes of work that I put up here. The first is really reducing harm within policing. That's a lot of the work that Nick is referencing, but that's being discussed today. We could even say firmly that the work of Benchmark overall focuses on this idea that there is harm that is there that can be reduced, can be constrained, can be measured, and can be changed. And that's a lot of our work. Our Justice Navigator is our flagship product, and that's something that talks about the use of administrative data to understand how police officers are engaging with the public using really 4 more concrete data points as well as a ton of community engagement. So we look at car stops, pedestrian stops, uses of force, and searches within the stops. And the goal there is to create, to stick with the analogy here, the high-level, 1,000-foot view of a police department. We would never say, stop there after you get your findings, which typically communicate some disparity. I think that's not news to anyone in this space, right? What we would say is you need to do a deeper investigation thereafter. You have to figure out a plan how to address some of these disparities or explain some of these disparities, particularly the part that police departments and municipalities own. And it's that second piece that I want to talk about, municipalities. A lot of our work is focused on the idea that public safety redesign is the next frontier. So to me, and to us at TPE, redesign moves beyond the idea of reform. Redesign means that we're building new systems, that we're doing things differently, that we are operationalizing the high-level ideas that say, inform community, bring in the science, all right, and really doing them in a way that is tangible to community and that, of course, folds the perspective and power of community into these processes. It's actually super easy to say here, all right? I can tell you it can get really difficult to actually do. So what we want to do is actualize the creation of a just, equitable, and non-racist public safety system. We want to do that by centering Black and vulnerable communities across the United States. Our core partners are those with decision-making power, right? And so what I want to emphasize is that often, and in most cases, that's not a police chief. If I was to come to you, Nick, when you were the police chief and say, what I want to do is expand the amount of mental health facilities and beds in your municipality. I want to ensure that drug treatment is no longer your responsibility, or response to the addicted population is no longer your responsibility. And I want to make sure that the unhoused community as well is no longer your responsibility. You'd say, great, those are great ideas. None of those are my department. I don't control the budget of this municipality. So what we want to do is ensure that we have police leaders at the table, along with our city managers, if it's that municipality where the city manager is the most powerful, or whether it's a mayor, but a person in positional authority to drive change, to be part of this process, all right? In one of our cities, our partner is the public safety director. And part of the goal is to expand the concept of public safety to well beyond policing and to include public health responders, alternate responders, and if they really want to, co-response. I typically don't recommend co-response as the first step. Another significant group that we want to bring in, and CPE is powered by science. So we want to bring in community members, but we want to do it in a way that ensures that community members' voice is captured in a qualitative, scientific way. So we don't just want to measure impressions, where we said, I felt like people were a little annoyed at the police. We want to be able to say, the community members that we interacted with, that we oversampled in Black and brown communities, felt this way about how they experience car stops. Envision this about a different way of experiencing public safety. They agree that they don't want a police officer showing up with an overdose. They want to partner with police on these 5 activities. And so bringing that to the center, bringing that to the forward, allows us to put a plan in place, develop a scope of work, right, that highlights what we can do with the municipality. In the city of St. Louis, we're on our 3rd scope of work. The first scope of work was just understanding. A lot of the measurement, looking at the data, doing a 911 call analysis, and understanding within that 911 call analysis, what percentage of the calls that we're seeing do you not need an armed agent of the state with a badge and a gun to be involved in? Now that includes some of the ideas that I've already talked about, mental health, et cetera. But it also means that we could talk a lot about non-fatal car accidents, non-active burglaries, and what it means to have a police resource, an expensive police resource, deployed there. We'll talk to them about policy. Not everyone likes the idea of eliminating the police from low-level traffic enforcement, right? But we'll have that conversation. And some folks are ready for it. Other folks are not, and they're quite honest about that. But we want to have those particular ideas. But I think what's most important about what we try to do is bring in some of the science that exists, some of the new initiatives that I think, Nick, you might have been referencing. So right now in the city of St. Louis, to operationalize this, we're in the city for about 2 years, and we encounter a really, really engaged group of community members. They are joining us on the crafting of a new use of force policy. We brought in a technical expert to advise them and guide them. So we created a policy that was operational and that the police department would actually buy into. But they hashed out the finer details of a policy and delivered a policy to the police department that could, and I hope will be, this is a couple months ago, copied and pasted. This isn't a high level, consider this or ensure the policy includes these 5 points. This is a written policy that was written by community members with a technical expert that made sure the policy was legal within Missouri state law and operational and didn't conflict with other policies around. They did the same thing for a mental health responder policy. Brought in community members and ensured that they had the pen, so to speak, to actually craft this policy. So having this, what we recognize is that this is a unique, maybe not too unique, but a unique situation where community members are really activated there. And what they need is a platform to really be part of a public safety system, to play a larger role within a public safety system. So looking around the country, we observed the use of risk terrain modeling, which is a model that I'm not going to bore everyone with today, but it effectively allows people to understand what creates opportunities for crime and disorder. And via a public safety collaborative that we stood up in St. Louis this summer, allows the community members to get this data, get this analysis, and be engaged in a process that we call, or should say they call DICE, data-informed community engagement. That means that, in a really concrete example, the data which is police data, which is overlaid with a bunch of other data, will suggest that at the corner of Smith and Jones Street, there's an uptick in strong arm robberies, an uptick in motor vehicle thefts, whatever it is. And the data that is embedded within the system, within the risk terrain modeling, will say, well, what we typically know is that the vacant lot that's present there and the gas station play a role. Now, in other places, Kansas City being one of them, that information is offered to the police department and they deploy officers to monitor those locations and try and reduce that problem. In our public safety collaborative, that information is offered to community members to first have a richer understanding about what is happening, and they can say, yes, it is the gas station. It's Jimmy and his friends who come there around midnight. Jimmy drives a red car. And they plan strong arm robberies and they go to the vacant lot to divvy up their findings, what they've stolen, right? Now, that's a much richer idea, but also provides the community with the opportunity to determine what the next step is going to be there. And it could be call the police, but more likely the orientation would be to engage that gas station owner who's a member of the community and say, what are you going to do to stop allowing your business to be a conduit for criminal activity? How do we get community members to play that role? And in St. Louis, that's what they're looking for. They don't want to keep calling 911. They don't want 911 to be calling the cops. They want 911 to be calling for help. And they want 911 to be able to dispatch people that are not people with badges and guns. But they also want to have some real decision-making power about how they solve problems that isn't a punitive response. So I'll close by saying that's one of the many things that we're looking to do. We're always looking out for other things that we can help our partners that are responsive to their needs. And our orientation is to think about this in one larger context. We've existed in a society where we have systems of punishment, the police being one of them, where every problem is met, or many problems are met, through punishment and through a punitive response. At CPE, what we want to do is support our partners to create a system of care that is not punitive, that responds to the problems that are present in our society, that are social in nature, right, that are not driven by they're not driven by people who are bad, but driven by societal issues. And we think that by partnering with our communities, by using the data, by centering the communities that have been most impacted, we can, in a case-by-case and municipality-by-municipality way, get to a point where that system of care is actualized. So thank you very much.
So AIR is definitely doing something right because these are organizations and groups. CPE is a long time, not only a collaborator of ours, but someone that we've definitely looked to as having been an incredible leader in the field for some time. Nick has been with us in some of the context of some of our other work. My name is Tahir Duckett. I'm the executive director at Georgetown Law's Center for Innovations in Community Safety. We, much like CPE, are kind of working along two tracks. One that is focused on reducing policing harm, and the second, which is working on providing support to programs and organizations and initiatives that are designed to help us reduce reliance on policing in the first place. So I actually come to you from right down the street. I've been at the HAVI conference this week, the Health Alliance for Violence Intervention, where they had over 700 violence intervention practitioners, violence interrupters, care navigators, folks who are on the ground in hospitals across the country who are working to try to prevent that violence before we need police to be involved. That's some of the work that we've been involved in, but I'll focus most of my time today talking about one of our flagship programs, which is called ABLE. ABLE stands for Active Bystandership in Law Enforcement. It launched in 2020 and has since spread to 360 police agencies, law enforcement agencies across the United States and Canada. ABLE is really focused on this key question that shows up so many times when you have these high-profile instances of police violence, right? Why didn't anyone say something? Why didn't anyone do something, right? We all know Derek Chauvin's name, right? But fewer of us know Alexander Kung's name and Thomas Lane's name, the officers who sat by while Derek Chauvin killed George Floyd, right? And so why didn't those officers say something in that moment? Why didn't somebody come and put a hand on Derek Chauvin's shoulder and say, hey, I've got it, I can take it from here, right? ABLE is about not just trying to answer that question, but trying to build a sort of culture in which those officers are more likely to do that in that particular moment. Did I hit the button correctly? Oh, no, now I've gone too many. ABLE is about building a culture. And so what that means for us is, yes, there is a training component. And it's a pretty significant training component. And the requirement is that to be an ABLE agency, every single officer within that department, from the newest recruitment to the chief, they all have to go through ABLE, right? The chief, the commissioner, the sheriff, they all have to go through ABLE, right? And that's the first part of building this sort of culture that has to extend all the way across the department. Because it's not enough to get a one-off training and check a box and then we move on and hope that we have fixed the problem. One of the things that we know about active bystandership, which law enforcement isn't the only field in which active bystandership has taken root. We've seen it in the airline industry. We've seen it in the medical industry. That it actually turns out that question, why didn't somebody say something? It's a very deeply human question, right? It's not something that is unique to police officers, right? It is something that many of us in this room might feel or might have felt. And so I actually would like to ask all of y'all, this is the afternoon, so I'm hoping I can get a little bit of participation. Think back to a moment. So if you're a law enforcement officer, maybe think back to your first year or two on the job. If you were not a law enforcement officer, think about you in your early career, and you see your boss making a mistake, or you see your boss say something that doesn't sit right with you. Something that is maybe wrong, maybe in front of a room like this, right? Maybe they say something incorrect. Do you say something, right? Do you say something? And if not, why? So I'm actually going to ask that, right? What would keep you, what might keep you from saying something in that moment? Any ideas?
Feeling like there was something I didn't know.
Feeling like there was something, so you might not have all the information. Maybe I don't actually have all the information. Yep. Yeah.
You might think, make your bad situation worse.
Maybe saying something will make it worse. Yes, right? And that's connected to that lack of, maybe I don't actually have all the information. Uh-huh. Why else? Why else might you not say something? You don't want to embarrass your boss. Yes, right? This is a big one, right? Is it going to seem like I'm undermining this person, right? And you said there's actually two things in there, right? There's the you don't want to embarrass, and there's the your boss piece, right? So you might not want to embarrass, maybe this is a colleague, maybe this is somebody who's even works under you. You might not want to embarrass them, maybe you don't say something for that reason. But it being a boss, that adds a new layer, right? Why else?
Career limiting.
Sorry?
Career limiting.
Right. So like a retaliation sort of a thing? Is that what you're thinking, or?
More just you're not seen as a team player.
Yeah.
Disruptive to the balance of that relationship, right?
Right, exactly, right? So maybe saying something is going to be seen as an attack on the sort of relationship. One of the things that we do a lot is in our training is we work on redefining loyalty, right? Because if there is anything that we know about law enforcement officers, it is that there is a deep, deep sense of loyalty. Now, does that loyalty mean I'm not going to say something to embarrass you, or I'm not going to say something to upset the apple cart? Or does that loyalty mean I'm going to make sure you don't lose your job, right? I'm going to make sure that you don't do something that you're going to regret for the rest of your life. I'm going to do something that, I'm going to make sure that you don't do something that's going to get you prosecuted, right? And so these are some of the things that we are trying to grapple with. And the training is a big part of that, but it's not the only part, right? Because building a culture of active bystandership means that people have to know that when they do say something, that they are going to be supported, right? That they're going to be backed up, that they're not going to be retaliated against, that their department and their leadership is going to have their back. And so we include a requirement that there's an anti-retaliation policy, and we also include requirements that there's annual refresher trainings, so that this is something that takes hold as this is part of our identity as a law enforcement department, is that we're an able agency. And what we do is we say something. We support our, we say something to support our colleagues, our ranking officers, all the way up and down the program. Now, in terms of the substance, there's a little bit more here that's important to understand. When we talk about active bystandership, we're not just talking about preventing misconduct. We are talking about preventing misconduct, right? But we're also talking about preventing mistakes. So for example, one of our case studies, one of our scenarios that we walk through is about a really tragic story in which an officer failed to conduct a pat-down properly, handcuffed a suspect in the front rather than in the back, and all of these officers who were part of the department, who knew that the officer had missed policy, right, had handcuffed in a way that was not consistent with policy, and had done this search in a way that was not consistent with policy. They all sat, they all watched, and then later on, that person, that suspect, got loose, slipped his handcuffs. I'm sorry, it wasn't that he was handcuffed in the front. It was that he was handcuffed with his hands facing each other. So he slipped his handcuffs up underneath his legs. He grabs a gun and he ends up shooting another officer, right? And so it's not just about saying something to prevent misconduct, it's also about saying something to prevent mistakes. That helps us get a real foot in the door to help officers understand this as a training that isn't just a, hey, we're picking on you, we don't think that you guys can do it, we don't think that y'all are always doing the wrong thing. It's not that kind of a training. It's a training that is also designed to help prevent and reduce the number of mistakes. The last thing that I will say is I want to just provide a little bit of context in terms of what we're actually doing with AIR. So we've been doing ABLE for nearly 3 years now, and a big part of that work has been we've been collecting survey data. We understand that we have some base level understanding about changes in perceptions kind of pre and post. But for us, we're a university, right? And so we have to know that the thing actually works. It can't be enough that we think it works. It can't be enough that we've got some general ideas that it works. And so we're engaged in several research projects. Our project with AIR is focused on trying to leverage the use of virtual reality technology to go back to those same officers and understand, okay, when you're put into a situation that calls for intervention, will you actually intervene, right? A year later, 2 years later, 6 months, a year, 2 years later, after receiving the ABLE training, after the entire department has been trained, is that culture change actually seeping in? And so I think that I will stop there and leave anything else for conversation.
It's crazy following up 3 esteemed executives. I'm not an executive, but I have been working on a series of policing projects for the last 6 years with the, are we in here? With the Lab for Applied Social Science Research at the University of Maryland. Our lab was founded by Dr. Rayshawn Ray, and our goal, the first goal of our lab, was to improve police performance. I mean, everyone wants to improve police behavior. The problem is police behavior is not well understood. It's very hard to measure police performance, police behavior. Benchmark knows this very well. The way that they solve that is get a whole bunch of data. With a whole bunch of data, we can start understanding how officers behave. At Laser, we took a little bit of a different direction. We decided to use a virtual reality experiments to try to understand exactly what under what conditions is police performance adjusted or changed. So by understanding what characteristics are influencing police behavior, well, then we can start making change. So 6 years ago, the Lab for Applied Social Science Research partnered with Google, Jigsaw, to develop a virtual reality training program in partnership with officers, of course. They had plenty of input with this. And the goal, of course, was to help understand how officers behave and to train officers, evaluate officers, so that we can better understand how they behave and we can improve policing by working with law enforcement officers. So this trainer program that I brought toys The trainer program, it's a decision-making process that we examine in this trainer program. So the trainer puts officers into situations, simulations, where they enact a law enforcement situation. They act as an officer as they would in their job. And we put them into several different situations. We have domestic disturbances, we have suspicious person calls, we have 5, a wellness check scene, we have plenty. And what's also interesting about these scenarios is the characters that the officers are interacting with. They're CGI characters, but they're also artificially intelligent. They are included with natural language processing, behavior recognition, so that when an officer is interacting with these virtual characters, the character is actually speaking back to them and responding to them. And what this is great about, or what's great about this, is that these are experimentally controlled behaviors. So we can understand how officers are reacting to a situation across officers, how they're reacting to the same situation. That solves a huge problem that we have with trying to understand police behavior, which is that every situation an officer goes into is different. So by using virtual reality, we can control for that. We can see what exactly is it about the situation that's changing the officer's behavior.